Well, hi there, I'm Noah Bradley. This is Handmade House TV, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about corners. Do extra corners cost extra money when designing and building a home? So stay tuned. Well, all right, once again, thanks for tuning in here to Handmade House TV. As you can see, I'm standing out at my lake property and with my finished foundation, which I'm very pleased with, which I just finished checking, and I can't find any discrepancies more than 1/8 of an inch, considering the length from one end of the house to the other, which is just mind-boggling to me. I've seen carpenters that they couldn't get within 1/8 of an inch with trim work. And so the idea that a foundation could be built so well is just, it's amazing to me. But what I wanted to talk about today was the idea of corners on the house. There's two rules associated with corners in a house, and that is A, everyone believes that the more corners you have, the more expensive your home is going to be. So try to keep your house to 4 corners, and therefore you'll save money by doing that. And the opposite end of the spectrum is that I have found that the more corners a house has, the more attractive the home is. So typically when I'm building a home and when I'm designing a home, I like to make it look like kind of a house is connected to a house connected to a house. I think it provides a much more interesting visual appeal to a home, and therefore I ended up with a lot of corners on a house. The masons, when they were here, commented that I had more piers than they had ever seen on a house before. And that's because I have porches that wrap around 3 sides of the house. Plus, this is primarily designed as a 1-story house, which means that the interior of the home has a lot of piers in order to help support the added girth of the home by putting all the floors in one level. But I wanted to address today the idea of corners, and there's another kind of parallel one to that, and a lot of people have been told this rule that a square house is the cheapest form of construction, and that's wrong. There's no difference in cost between a square house and a rectangular house, and a rectangular house is far more attractive and functional than a square house. So please don't build a square house, build a rectangular house. And ideally one that connects the several together, and you end up with a whole lot of corners. So anyway, I wanted to really pay attention in this particular construction so that I can answer that question for you. Did it cost any more with drawing the plans to have more corners than not? No, it did not. It costs the same when you're using a pencil, how many corners you draw in. I asked the footer guys when they were here and had already given me the bid, had already started the work and everything else. Did you add in any extra in for the corners, the extra corners on the house? And they looked at me like I was from outer space and said, of course not. Never crossed our mind what to do with it. In figuring out their cost, they run by the linear foot, not how many times that foot might crook or not. Ongoing. So then I asked the block masons when they were here, hey, did you guys by any chance, did y'all add any extra to your bid in order to handle the extra corners here? And they made a comment that yes, indeed, I have a lot of corners here. I think they said that they worked on a couple of other projects that had more corners. So I came in kind of like 3rd place on that as far as the number of corners goes. But they said no. They did not add any extra in for having more corners than if it was, say, just a simple rectangle. Now, when it comes to carpentry phase, I'm planning on doing a good bit of the framing myself. I don't know if I'm going to do all of it or if I'm going to do 10% of it. It all depends upon how I'm feeling, what the weather's like, how much else I got going on in life, and what kind of quote I get for doing the framing here. But as a result of me participating some in the labor, the framing is not going to cost any more to have the corners. The corners do not affect at all the plumbing in your house, the insulation in your house, the wiring in your house, heating, air conditioning, drywall, interior partitions, flooring. There's no effect on any of that inside stuff whatsoever. Windows, it doesn't make any difference. Where it might would be, say, the siding on the outside, because there's not as long of a length. You gotta side a little different walls going on. But since I'm planning on doing some of the siding or all of the siding myself, there's not going to be any extra there whatsoever with regard to that. So the only thing left is the roof. Now I'm going to be working on framing the roof, so there's no extra there. So it's in the finish roof up on top. Now I've already gotten a couple of bids on the roof as it goes, and I've already spoken to the guys, and the ones that are quoting me asphalt shingles, which I really don't want to do. I've never built a home with asphalt shingles on it. But what I'm faced with on this particular project is I'm trying to give the greatest value to the home and to bring the cost down. It's just astronomical what has happened to the cost of building a home these days. And so I'm trying to consider each phase of it, what I can live without. How can I cut back a little bit from my ultimate standard of building just the most wonderful, incredible home possible, regardless of the cost. So when it came time for me to get the bidding of the roofing here, they said there really isn't any difference because of all the angles up there for asphalt shingle. But when it came to the idea of doing a metal roof, which is what I want, it really did provide quite an impact, probably to the tune of an extra, I don't know, $10,000 more for the roof, maybe even more than that. I can't remember the exact figures here. But so in the entire construction of this home, the only thing that having 20 corners in the house instead of 4 corners in the house, the only thing that's going to perhaps add a little bit of extra to it will be a metal roof if I choose to go that route, and if I choose to use the roofer that I've gotten a bid off of. So please don't let extra corners be a hindrance or a consideration of yours when it comes to building the home. When you're trying to seek value, when you're trying to get the biggest bang for your buck, you're trying to save money wherever you can without living with regrets. Well, the biggest regret you would have is if you went with a wood foundation or a pier foundation. That's something really hard to come back in and correct and change in the future. But you know, when it comes to and you know, like I said, I save money by going with cinder block here. But that's not the design of the home is extremely important. You want the house to be gorgeous for not only your enjoyment for when you're living in it, but also when it comes time for you to sell it, as far as getting the best return on your home, and for the enjoyment of neighbors, for anybody that stops by, for future homeowners. Likely there's at least a dozen people will live in your home over the coming century or two that it stands. So design is extremely critical. You get a more attractive home the more corners you have in it. The real cost of it, anyone that tells you not to do that, they're leading you down a path you shouldn't go down. Design your prettiest home. Don't worry about the corners. Okay, that's it for today. I look forward to seeing you next week here on Handmade House TV. Until then, you guys take care. Bye now.